back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final. Back here on the GSM.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, April 5th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about Derrick Henry. Him talking about how the Cowboys never reached out to him. I think this was during his introductory press conference with the Ravens. So I just wanted to touch upon that, give my thoughts on it. Then, in the second part of the show, we'll go through a timeline of the Houston Texans, how they went from being what people may say is a laughing stock in the NFL to now being possible Super Bowl contenders in just a short amount of time. So we'll get into that as well. Then in the third part of the show, I'll talk about an article that I saw on CBS Sports talking about the top trio wide receivers in the NFL. So we'll get into that, and I'll give my thoughts on the list. And I did take a look at it. There's some rankings of it, parts of it that I disagreed with, so I'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, I'll talk about something that Tom Brady said at the match with Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen, and how it kind of predicted Stephon Diggs being traded to the Texans. So we'll get into all that. Before I do get into that, so I'm setting up for the show. I got everything set, and then all of a sudden, my house starts shaking. And here on the East Coast, at least where I am, we had a little bit of an earthquake. And I've never experienced something like that before. And it was quick, it was brief. Thankfully, nothing, at least where I am, nothing bad happened. But I've never experienced something like that before. And, my phone's blowing up with text messages like, "Oh, did you feel that earthquake?" I've never experienced something like that before. So that was kind of crazy. And I was sitting here going, I kind of wish I was live for that, just so you guys would see it and not think that I'm crazy, because this actually did happen. So, yeah, I really have no words. I just was kind of sitting here right before going live and saying, wow, I can't believe that happened. Because where I am, I've never experienced that. So I just wanted to bring that up. My dog is right outside my bedroom door. She didn't do anything. So didn't bark, nothing. So yeah, it seems like everything's all right. But I just wanted to share that because I thought that was kind of a weird way to start off the day. And again, hopefully, fine where I am. Hopefully, everybody, if you know what I'm talking about with this earthquake that happened, you're all good. Everybody's all right. But at least where I am, it was not that crazy. So let's get into now what we're going to talk about on the show. So let's start off with Derrick Henry. So this was at his introductory press conference, I believe, with the Ravens, and I think he was asked about the Cowboys, and he talked about his desire to play for the Cowboys. He would have liked to have played for the Cowboys, but it just didn't happen. He lives in Dallas, so maybe it kind of made sense, and also the fact that the Cowboys had a need at running back. But he ended up signing with the Ravens, 2-year deal, $20 million. And, yeah, the Cowboys supposedly never reached out to him. And I have an article from NFL.com, so I want to see if there's any quotes, direct quotes from him on that. So this is what he said. Oh, well, this is what he said on the Pivot podcast. So I guess that's where he brought up the Cowboys. I knew once free agency started that I wanted to work something out with the Ravens if we could. Even though I'm living in Dallas, and Dallas being a perfect situation as well because we live there, we ain't got to move. But at the same time, Ravens, the history of it, and then talking to Ray Lewis at the Pro Bowl, his passion about the organization and his impact there and how he talked about it, I was like, man, if I'm not in Tennessee or I don't get to go to Dallas, I'd love to be a Raven. So, yeah, so he basically did say they never reached out to him. Then after that, he said, it would have been crazy. I thought it'd be some type of reach out, some type of talks or whatever. They never reached out. I don't really know too much about their organization. All I know is what I hear. I was talking to my agent. They weren't really interested. It is what it is. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be where I'm going to be, and I feel like Baltimore was the perfect spot for me. So, now, I think the main reason for that is, well, the Cowboys really didn't have a lot of cap space. I think that's really what it comes down to. If you go back to when DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Titans, and he was quoted saying how teams didn't want him, well, the teams that could have had interest in him just did not have cap space. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here with Derrick Henry, is the Cowboys just really didn't have the cap space for it. But I think also you could look at him being 30. I think he's still got some mileage left on him, of course, but I think that's another thing that plays a factor into it too. But I think the main reason is, of course, the limited amount of cap space that the Cowboys have. That's why they really haven't made any moves. They re-signed their long snapper, and they signed Eric Hendricks. That's really all they did. I mean, they did bring back Rico Dowdle, one of their other running backs. But yeah, and now you're hearing that Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys have mutual interest. They could get Ezekiel Elliott on a cheap deal. Derrick Henry was not going to be cheap. They just didn't have the cap space for it. Now, if they did, would the Cowboys have maybe signed him? I think it's possible. But I guess we'll never know. But to be honest, I think Derrick Henry's in a better spot. I think he's in a better spot than the Cowboys. And you could say, well, you're being biased because you're a Giant fan and you don't want to have to deal with them. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. But I feel like the Ravens, at least they got to an AFC Championship game. Cowboys can't get past the second round. I think if Derrick Henry wants to get to a Super Bowl, well, you go to the Chiefs, but that wasn't going to happen. The Ravens, I think, give him a better chance of winning a Super Bowl than the Cowboys do. Just because of the Cowboys' past history, well, recent history, where they just simply cannot get past the second round. They didn't get out of the first round. They lost to the Packers. So I think with the Ravens, and especially the Ravens love to run the football too. They're a run-first team. The Cowboys, they become more of a passing team. They want to have a balanced offense, but Dak's going to be airing it out. They're not going to be running the football like they used to when they had Zeke, and Dak was just a rookie. And it was more of Zeke's team. And I've talked about this. It kind of, transitioned from a Zeke team to a Dak team. And now the Cowboys are a pass-happy offense. But in order for the Cowboys to be better next year, they're going to have to address the running back position through the draft. But again, from at least what I'm hearing, it's not that loaded of a draft class when it comes to running backs. But we'll see. The Cowboys are good at drafting, and maybe they feel the running backs that they have is good enough. But we'll see. Like I said, they have Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys have mutual interest, so that Zeke could end up going back to Dallas, which would be kind of funny, but we will see. But I think that's really what it comes down to, is the Cowboys just did not have cap space for him, and ultimately Derrick Henry went to the Ravens, a team that he tormented in the playoffs and that overtime win in Baltimore during the COVID season. The Ravens are happy to have him. I know I did a segment on John Harbaugh's excitement over him joining the Ravens and how they don't have to deal with him anymore. But like I said, I think they have Derrick Henry has a better chance of getting to a Super Bowl with the Ravens than he does the Cowboys. Now, I say that, but you also have the Chiefs who just beat everybody. And I get it. But like I said, the Ravens, they were one step away from getting to a Super Bowl. The Cowboys have failed to get to a championship game since I started watching football. It's been a long time. And I think that's going to continue because the Cowboys didn't get any better this offseason. They maybe got a little bit worse. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a bad team in 2024. Absolutely not. I think they're still going to be a solid team. But, that gets you maybe 11, 12 wins. Maybe you win the division. Because it's going to come down between the Cowboys and Philly. I've said that a bunch of times. But I think that's it. You get to the playoffs, you're either losing in the wild card round or you're losing in the divisional round. The conference is better. And they really just they didn't make any changes. Now, you got guys coming back from injury. You got Trayvon Diggs coming back on defense, which should help. But, I mean, how did the Cowboys get better this offseason? They didn't. But you have the draft. So they are going to have to revamp their team. Well, not revamp, but reload by adding through the draft. That's what they're going to have to do. And maybe they draft a receiver. I think I could definitely see them taking a receiver because they got rid of Michael Gallup. Brandon Cooks is getting older. So maybe they draft a receiver at some point. I could see that. But who knows? Who knows? But, yeah, Cowboys never reached out to Derrick Henry. And I think we kind of all know the reasons why that happened. But, I mean, if Derrick Henry went to the Cowboys, that would have been a good fit too. It's just, I think he could get further with the Ravens than you could with the Cowboys, based off of recent history. And I know it's a different year. Year to year, things change, but the Cowboys have kind of stayed in that same spot where they'll either miss the playoffs, they'll get to the playoffs, they'll be one and done, or they get knocked down in the divisional round. And until they get over that hump and get to a championship game, I'm going to just believe that that's going to be their ceiling. And again, that's not me as a Giant fan. It's just, that's what many people think. You got to prove it. Go out and prove it. If the Cowboys were able to make it to a championship game with Dak Prescott in previous years, I'd say, you know what? They could definitely do that and maybe get to a Super Bowl. But it just has not happened because Dak Prescott continues to, play down in the playoffs. And the Cowboys are one and done. Or they get to the next round and they lose there. So, but Again, I think it comes down to cap space. But Derrick Henry would be a solid fit for the Cowboys because, especially with their need at running back. So, but let me know what you guys think about that. If Derrick Henry went to Dallas, would that have been a good fit? I mean, I think so. But let me know what you guys think about the whole Derrick Henry Cowboys situation. And what do you expect from him from the Ravens this year? I expect a productive year from him. So we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Texans, how they went from being pretenders to, I don't want to say laughingstock, but we'll say pretenders to contenders, I guess. Well, I don't even know if that's a better way to put it. But that's what we will discuss when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Texans and kind of like the timeline of certain things that have happened, how they went from, 2021 where, well, actually, the article that I was looking at, they go back even further, but how they went from how they were in 2021 to what they are now, which is right now Super Bowl contenders. So the timeline actually does go back to 2017. And it talks about their general manager at the time, Rick Smith. He takes leave of absence, leaving due to family reasons and possibly strained relations with head coach Bill O'Brien. Then Brian Gaine is fired as the new is hired as the new GM, clearing the way for O'Brien to become the chief decision maker. Then the Texans, they acquired Laremy Tunsil. So that was back in 2019. Yeah, I don't know why it says. So Brian Gaine is fired as the new GM. I don't know. I guess it must have been a typo with how I have it in my notes. But yeah. So Bill O'Brien. Well, actually, because Bill O'Brien, he's the one that orchestrated the trade with the Cardinals to get David Johnson and trade away DeAndre Hopkins. But yeah. They got Laremy Tunsil from the Miami Dolphins, and Jadeveon Clowney was traded to the Seahawks. Laremy Tunsil turned into like one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Bill O'Brien is officially named the GM. This is now January 28th of 2020, solidifying his control over the team. Yeah, so it wasn't a typo. So yeah, Brian Gaine, he was let go. So then March 16th of 2020, DeAndre Hopkins is traded to the Cardinals for David Johnson. And that was a very controversial move because David Johnson, now you go back to 2015 is when he burst onto the scene, had that 3-touchdown game against the Eagles on Sunday night. 2016 was his best season by far. And he was the best running back in the NFL that year, arguably. And I also had him in fantasy, and he helped me win my fantasy championship. But then injuries kind of slowed him down, and the Cardinals, they went from, because they were a contender, they went to the NFC Championship game against the Panthers. The Panthers did destroy them, but they did go to the NFC Championship game. 2016 was a down year, and it just kept getting worse. And David Johnson got hurt week 1 of 2017. I think he suffered a wrist injury, and he just wasn't the same player after that. But again, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the Cardinals were just declining as a team all around. So, yeah. Then he gets traded to the Texans for DeAndre Hopkins, and the Cardinals won that trade. And David Johnson just, not the same player. So it just didn't make any sense. 2020 just ended up being a down year for the Texans, and they were a contender. I mean, if you remember, they were up 24-0 against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and then the Chiefs came back and won, I think it was like 51-31. So yeah, he was fired. Bill O'Brien was fired in October of 2020 as the head coach and GM after an 0-4 start to the season. Then in January of 2021, so Texans bring in a new GM. Deshaun Watson now requests a trade in January 28th of 2021. David Culley is hired as the new head coach. And then, the stuff with Deshaun Watson, the off-the-field stuff, that all starts happening. And he ends up not playing in 2021. So David Culley ended up being fired after a 4-13 season, and Watson not playing. Lovie Smith then is brought in. He's fired after a 3-13-1 season. And I did bring this up. They won that game against the Colts, final week of the regular season, and that gave them the number 2 overall pick instead of the number 1 overall pick. And that's what led to them getting C.J.Stroud. So they ended up hiring DeMeco Ryans on January 31st, 2023. He's hired. April 27th, last year's draft, they draft C.J.Stroud. They draft Will Anderson Jr. And they end up having a great season. Well, they had a great season, exceeded expectations, went 10-7, won the division, won a playoff game. And then they go out. They have a solid free agency. They bring in Danielle Hunter. They bring in Azeez Al-Shire from the 49ers. And then they also bring in Danico Autry from the Titans. So they bolster that defensive line. They lost Jonathan Grenard. I thought it was Greenyard, but at least from one of the football YouTubers I watched, they pronounce it Grenard. So I guess that's my bad then. But they had those guys on defense to go along with Will Anderson. And then most recently, they acquired Stephon Diggs from the Houston Texans. And to go along with Tank Dell, another guy they drafted in last year's draft, Nico Collins, who I think his rookie season was 2021. And then they also got Joe Mixon. So the Texans really loaded up this offseason. And on top of that, we still haven't even gotten to the draft yet. And what they traded for Diggs, it wasn't even their pick. So you got to love what the Texans are doing. And it's been a long road for them. They did go from being contenders back down to being, I guess I'll just say pretenders, and then back to contenders again. And now they're Super Bowl contenders, I think. Especially with getting Diggs now. So, and you thought after they traded, when they traded Deshaun Watson and the Browns gave him all that money, people were wondering, when are the Texans going to be good again? Because that final year of Watson, they went 4-13 or 4-12. It just was not. It wasn't good. Deshaun Watson was good. He was putting up good numbers, but the Texans just were not a good team. And he doesn't play in 2021 with all the stuff that happened off the field. Don't have to get into that, but then they move off of him. He goes to the Browns. You got Davis Mills as your quarterback. And Tyrod Taylor also. I forgot Tyrod Taylor was on the Texans too. But they got it right. They got it right. Now, I don't think people weren't really fans of what they did with David Culley, and and Lovie Smith, and I understand that. But then they bring in DeMeco Ryans, and they draft C.JStroud, and now look at them. I mean, if David Culley had this team and Lovie Smith had this team, what would the Texans be? I mean, I don't know. But the Texans really turned it around. And they are going to be a legit contender in the AFC for a long time. And especially now with the cherry on top, you get Stephon Diggs. I mean, the sky's the limit. They could definitely go to the Super Bowl. They definitely have that chance. But again, you got to get past the Chiefs. And I know I did mention this, but they did beat the Bengals. They did lose to the Ravens twice. We have not seen C.J.Stroud in this group take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And we will see that in 2024, which I'm really looking forward to. Now, I don't know if I think the Texans are the road team because they are playing each other. I think the Texans are the road team. So we could very well see the Texans take on the Chiefs opening night on that first Thursday. Which, sign me up for it. Sign me up for that. Because that should be... Now, I would like to see that game played later in the season, but if that's the first game of the year, sign me up. Because I think that's a road game. Let me just pull up the Chiefs or the Texans schedule here. Because I believe it is. I believe the Texans are the road team. So let's see. And I actually did look at their schedule. Yeah, the Texans are the away team. So, and the Ravens are also a road opponent as well. So maybe it's either going to be one of those two teams, I would think, or maybe the Chargers with Harbaugh. It's possible. But my phone is still blowing up over that earthquake. Yeah, but. Like I said, sign me up. If it's the Texans, I would love for that to be the matchup to start the year. So, but again, love what they have done. The trio of wide receivers, which we will talk about in the next segment. And Diggs doesn't have to be the... Okay, well, my hats just fell. That's funny. There wasn't any earthquake again. That all just came crashing down. So yeah, on the I have like a little shelf here with a bunch of hats on it, and that just all came falling down. Thankfully, nothing on top of my desk here fell because that'd be really bad. But yeah, so that just I'm gonna go back and rewatch that. Well. That's just what today's been. So, now I just completely lost my train of thought, but I really got to go back and watch this now. But I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, I'm really excited over the Texans. Can't wait to see what they're going to be able to do. So I got a little bit of a mess to clean up when I'm done here, but which shouldn't take that long. Literally every single hat. I'm not going to turn my laptop because I don't want to because then my camera's going to glitch out. But, yeah, that, didn't expect that to happen. But of course this happens after the earthquake. Whatever. Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got for the show today, guys. I'm wrapping it up. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think about the Texans because I'm really high on them. I think they are going to be a top AFC team in 2024 with now Diggs. So let's see what they can do. But actually, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again To tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And I said the old link, GSMCpodcast.net. Makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. Again, GSMCpodcast.net. See, what just happened, that really just threw me off. But anyways, when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the trio rankings of wide receivers, and I'll give you my thoughts on that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. For the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the trio rankings for wide receivers in 2024. So I did just rewatch my reaction to my hats falling on me, and I can't believe that happened. I just closed out of YouTube. I was going to say go back to the to where it happened. I was going to say the timestamp that happened, but anyways, let's get into this list here. So this is on CBS Sports, and I kind of just wanted to go over the rankings of the trios of wide receivers in the NFL and give you my thoughts on it and what I agree with, what I disagree with. So let's start off. All right, so at number 12, so there's 12 trios. So at number 12, they got DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that. Well, again, we'll go through the list, and I'll give you my thoughts. So that's at number 12. Those guys are at number 12. Then at number 11, you got the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Jalen Tolbert. Now, CeeDee Lamb is the reason why the Cowboys are on this list. But when you got Brandon Cooks and... Sorry, I'm just now I'm so paranoid about things falling on me. But CeeDee Lamb is what makes the Cowboys... What puts the Cowboys on this list. Because... you got Jalen Tolbert. Brandon Cooks actually was decent for them. He had 8 touchdowns. I mean, I guess maybe they're a little low just because, you got CeeDee Lamb. But again, it's a trio. I think this trio is low. At number 10, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell. I feel like they should be a little bit higher than 10. You got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Trent Sherfield at 9. Again, these are the best wide receivers in the NFL, and they're lower on the list. The Seahawks, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba at 8. At number 7, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer. I feel like they got to be a little bit lower. I think, now Mike Evans had a great year, 1,200 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, he had over 1,000 yards, 2 touchdowns. Trey Palmer, 3 touchdowns on the season. I don't know. For me, I think you got to put them a little bit lower. I think you got to move up. I think I actually would put them ahead. No, I would put them behind the Seahawks trio. I would put them behind the Vikings. I'd put them lower than the Rams. I'd move up the Cowboys as well. I'd put the Buccaneers lower. At number 6, you got the Bears, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Tyler Scott. I mean, I'd probably put them lower as well. I'd probably move up. I think Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, they definitely should be higher than a lot of these, or some of these teams. Definitely, I think the Bucs. The Bears, yeah, I think they should be ahead of the Bears too. The Eagles are at 5. You got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Devontae Parker. 2 Devontaes spelled differently. I mean, I have no problems with them being at 5. You got the 49ers ahead of them with Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings. Fine with that. The Bengals are at 3. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trent Irwin. Number 2, you got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Braxton Berrios. And then number 1 is the Texans with Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And I don't want to make the argument and say, well, with some of these, guys haven't played with their new teams. Like Devontae Parker hasn't played with the Eagles yet. Keenan Allen hasn't played with the Bears yet. So I think for me, with this ranking, I feel like the Titans, I don't know if they should. I mean, I guess because Ridley and D-Hop are older. Now, if you're talking about prime D-Hop and prime Ridley, then they would be higher. I think it's because they're on the older side now that they're at 12. But yeah, for me, I would rank the Buccaneers lower. Unfortunately, I don't like saying that, and that's not a knock on the receivers. It's just I think the ones that are below them are better. I think DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, I think you could put them over the Bucs. I think the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I mean, I think it's because Trent Sherfield brings them down. I mean, if they still had KJ Osborne, then I think they'd be ranked higher. Same thing with the Bengals. I feel like if the Bengals had Tyler Boyd still, I feel like you put them at 1. But I think because now Trent Irwin is that third receiver, they're ranked 3. I mean, listen, I can't really argue with the Texans at 1 because you're getting Diggs, 1,000-yard receiver. Nico Collins was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, and Tank Dell could have been a 1,000-yard receiver if he didn't get hurt. So, yeah, I can't really disagree with that. I think that's the best trio is the Texans. But I would probably reshuffle some of the other ones. I mean, well, honestly, you could probably I think maybe you put the Bengals over the Dolphins. Because I think T. Higgins is a better receiver than Jalen Waddle is. But the problem is, well, T. Higgins was hurt, only had 656 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle had over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, T. Higgins had 5 more touchdowns than Jalen Waddle, and I mean only by 1. But Waddle had over 1,000 yards. If T. Higgins was healthy, he'd probably be at around 1,000 yards. But yeah, I would maybe put the Bengals over the Dolphins. And then you got the 49ers. Now, here's the thing. When you look at Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, I mean, they are very good receivers. But I don't think they're in the same class as Tyreek Hill, as Jamar Chase. I think those receivers are better. Even though, like, again, Ayuk and Deebo are really good wide receivers. But that's why you probably leave them at 4. But again, this is a trio rankings. So, and honestly, Jawan Jennings is a decent number 3. And he made plays in the Super Bowl, too. He had a passing touchdown, and he had a receiving touchdown as well. So, you know, he played a big role in the Super Bowl. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, if the Vikings, if they still had KJ Osborne, I think they'd be ranked higher. But I mean, I think they should be, even because you have Justin Jefferson, who still had over 1,000 yards despite missing some time with the injury, and Jordan Addison, 911 receiving yards. I think they should be a little bit higher, but Rams should be higher. I think the Bucs should be lower. But that's really my thoughts on it. I don't know what you guys think. Yeah, like I said, people still talking about this this earthquake that we're having. And again, I had the aftermath with all my hats just falling on top of me. Yeah, like this is what we got right here. Just hats all over the place. So, yeah, still can't believe that happened. But back to the trio thing, and I just want to pick up also my my Yankee coffee cup that my friend got me. Also, I had on my desk. That was one of the noises that you heard. That fell over with all the avalanche of hats that rained down on me. That fell over. Thankfully, nothing fell from my my desk here, because there's like, there's like mini like statues of Derek Jeter and I think Thurman Munson, and then there's Mariano Rivera as well. Yeah, that came falling down. I thankfully that did not happen. So, but I'm just to show you. Now one of my hats is in the garbage because my garbage is right here. Yeah. Well, listen, we had to persevere through it, and we were able to do it. So hopefully nothing else falls. I'm like very paranoid now that, and even honestly, even before today, I'm just paranoid that something is just gonna fall from the top of my my desk here. But thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. Knock on wood. And it's just funny because everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all my hats just decide to fall all over the place. So, listen, there's been a lot of things that have happened on this show, with my dog barking and my camera, of course, not working at times. I mean, there's always something. There's always something. Oh yeah, and also there was that time where in the very beginning, well, not in the very beginning, but closer to the beginning, where I started doing a show, and I never plugged my mic in. I never plugged it in. So I was just doing the show, and then all of a sudden I was made aware, you don't have sound. And I'm like, I don't have sound. And I look, and I never plugged in my mic. And actually, this was the first time I had to do both the football and the baseball podcast. So it was one of the first days doubling up, or one of the first weeks doubling up. So I had to start all over again and re-record. So that was a lot of fun. But it's always something. And then this is just the latest. Hats just falling. Avalanche. And, yeah. That's, but you know what? That's my show for you. We're here to entertain. And, that was, I just, like, again, hopefully nothing else happens. We still got one more segment to go. Still got one more. So something else could happen. Who knows? But, yeah. Hats are all over the place. Listen, I got a mess to clean up when I'm done here. So, but it is what it is. So, with this segment here, again, let me run through the list one more time. So this is how they had it ranked on CBS. Now I'm not. Oh, here we go. So 12 was the Titans trio. 11 was the Cowboys trio. 10, the Rams. 9 was the Vikings. 8, the Seahawks. 7, the Buccaneers. 6, the Bears. 5, the Eagles. 4, the 49ers. 3 the Bengals, 2 the Dolphins, and then at 1 is the Texans. So let me know what you guys think about that. Who should be higher? Who should be lower? Like I said, I think the Buccaneers could be a little bit lower. I think you could move some of those teams behind them up. I think maybe you could flip-flop the Bengals and maybe put them over the Dolphins. But, again, the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill. But I think it's just the combination of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think, is a little bit better than the combination of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But, again, that's just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, let me know. Complain about it to me in the comments. But now, let's get into our final break. And when we come back from our final break, we're going to talk about something a little fun. Not really something that's that crazy, but just something Tom Brady said at the match. And we'll get into that when we come back from and this is regarding Stefon Diggs. Talk about Diggs more. That's what we'll discuss when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Tom Brady's prediction coming true about Stefon Diggs leaving the Buffalo Bills. So I'm looking back now. First it happened when the hats fell. This happened in the second segment. So I'm talking about the trio of wide receivers. So of Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And that's when it ends up happening. So, again, I don't have, the exact timestamp, but just go back to that second segment and look for it if you missed it, because that is when the hats just come crashing down on me. And, hopefully nothing else happens. But, yeah, let's get into this now for the final part here. A little fun segment here. Talking about Tom Brady. So, Tom Brady was talking some trash at the match. This was back, when it was him and Aaron Rodgers against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And at one point, so this is what he said. So this was 2 years ago. So he said, "I've got my boy Mike," meaning Mike Evans, "ready to catch. I don't even know who caught Aaron's. Devontae left him. Tyreek left you, Patrick. Josh, don't worry. Someone's going to leave you too." Now again, playful banter, but it ended up becoming a reality because Stefon Diggs ended up getting traded to the Texans. So now, turns out somebody ended up leaving Josh Allen. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that is just the other two quarterbacks. Tyreek Hill got traded to the Dolphins, and Davante Adams got traded to the Raiders. And that was all in the same offseason. Those two guys getting traded from two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Now, is Josh Allen a Hall of Famer? Not yet. Does he have that potential? Of course. But he's got to start winning some Super Bowls because Patrick Mahomes already has 3. And it's just, it really is crazy how you had Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill leave. They left Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes to go play with Tua Tagovailoa and Derek Carr. And listen, those two guys still ended up producing. It's not like they weren't going to. But, with Tyreek Hill has played with other quarterbacks besides Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes. He played with Alex Smith. So we've seen Tyreek Hill play with, without another at least another starting quarterback, because Aaron Rodgers has gotten hurt, and Devontae Adams has had to play with Brent Hundley. That was that year he had to play with Brent Hundley. And actually, that was kind of when Devontae Adams, because if you remember, 2015, Packers fans were done with Devontae Adams. They really, he just regressed. And then 2016 came around, and Devontae started to improve. And then 2017, Rodgers gets hurt, and Devontae still produced. And then 2018, continued to break out, and every year after that. And he turned out to be one of the best receivers in the NFL. And I think if he was still with Aaron Rodgers, I would still look at him as the best wide receiver in the NFL. But, now you went from Derek Carr. Again, you put up good numbers with them, then to Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell. Again, Devontae still produced, but, with the better quarterback, he'd put up better numbers. And he is starting to get older, but he's still producing. It's just crazy how you had those guys leave and leave their Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But it's because they wanted to get paid. Like, Diggs already has his contract. Now, the Texans kind of reworked it so he could become a free agent after this year, I believe. So, again, the Texans, just working their magic. I think it was either after this year or after 2025, but I think it's after this year. Or he could become become a free agent in 2025. So, after this year. So, but I think Diggs' situation was a little bit different. But it's funny how Brady said that, and that just ended up happening. And he's like, yeah, my boy Mike didn't leave. No, Mike Evans could have left Tampa. I mean, this is after Brady retired, of course, but Mike Evans stayed in Tampa. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, missed Devontae Adams in 2022 because, he had to try to build up a rapport with Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs. And the Packers got hot at the end of the season, but what happened? The Lions beat them and knocked them out of the playoffs, basically. And Seattle got in. But listen, Patrick Mahomes doesn't miss Tyreek Hill. Nope. 2 Super Bowls since Tyreek Hill has left. I think Tyreek Hill misses Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes doesn't miss Tyreek Hill. Well, yeah, he doesn't. The receivers dropping passes, that was frustrating, but what happened? They ultimately got back to the Super Bowl and won again. So you know what? No, he doesn't miss it. I think Tyreek Hill misses the Chiefs. And now Diggs, he's in a good situation with the Texans. And if you were to rank the teams that Devontae Adams is now on, the Raiders, the Dolphins, and now the Texans with Diggs. I mean, I would put the Texans over. Oh, the Raiders are unfortunately for them, they are going to be ranked last. Dolphins would be second. Texans would be first. Stephon Diggs is in the best spot. And the reason for that is the quarterback. Diggs went from Josh Allen to C.J.Stroud. Now, again, I would still probably rank Josh Allen ahead of C.J.Stroud at the moment, but that could change after this year or after next season. Tyreek Hill went from Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa. Again, has put up great numbers with Tua, but that is no offense to Tua, that is a downgrade. And with the Raiders, Devontae went from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr and put up good numbers with Derek Carr, and then now they downgrade even further to Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell. And the Texans right now, and roster-wise and where they're at, and the Texans just won a playoff game too. Texans won a playoff game. They've reloaded on defense. I mean, I've talked about them a lot these last couple of shows. So, yeah. Diggs is right now in the best spot. And I think Aaron Rodgers misses Devontae because the Jets are trying to get him back for Rodgers. We'll see now with Josh Allen. We know Patrick Mahomes doesn't miss Tyreek Hill. Josh Allen now, let's see what he does without Diggs. And, watching a couple of, TikToks and, other people giving opinions on the Bills right now. I think my stance on it is I don't think the Bills are going to be bad. I think if they are bad, I said this yesterday, then I think you got to say goodbye to Sean McDermott, say goodbye to the general manager. Those guys are gone. But I feel like the Bills are still going to be okay. It's just a lot of subtractions. And they're really going to have to reload through the draft. But I think the Bills got knocked down a peg now with Diggs being out. Now going to the Texans. But that's just me. Again, they got Josh Allen. And getting Diggs really elevated Josh Allen's game. And now with him not there anymore, and just kind of the changes in the offseason with the Bills, I mean, how is that going to impact Josh Allen? We'll see. But I don't think the Bills are going to be a bad team. I think they're going to be okay, but I think the AFC East is wide open right now. So, we'll see. I mean, I think Josh Allen will still put up good numbers, but it's going to be weird. It's going to be interesting. But like I said, we've seen now Rodgers without Devontae Adams, at least for a season. Didn't really get to see. Well, he got paired up with Garrett Wilson. We didn't get to see what they could do. We saw what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do without Tyreek Hill. Now we got to see what is Josh Allen going to be like now without Stephon Diggs. I mean, we did see that, but before now this is the post-Diggs era. How is Josh Allen going to be? We'll have to find out. So that's pretty much it for the show for today. Yeah, a very interesting show to say the least. Had a very funny moment with, again, the hats raining down on me while I was doing the show today. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, because again, I have to clean this all up. So we'll get to that after the conclusion of the broadcast here, and then we'll go from there. But I hope everybody has a good weekend. Again, if you felt the earthquake, hopefully everybody's okay. I'm at a loss for words with what happened today. And like I said, there's always something that happens during my show. Whether it's camera not working, or my dog barking, and now hat avalanche. So, I don't know what else to say. But, again, hope everybody has a good weekend. Make sure to tune in for the Final Four for both the men's and women's tournaments in basketball. Watch a lot of baseball. NBA, NHL playoffs coming up. And make sure to tune into our other shows as well. Want to try to, make sure to mention that. Tune into our other shows, get different perspectives on things. Hopefully, in everybody else's shows, they don't have stuff falling on them. Because, I mean, again, thankfully it was my hats and not what's up here. Because, yeah, that wouldn't be good. But I think we're all right. Listen, we thought the offseason, the craziness was over, and then Diggs gets traded. So maybe somebody else gets traded over the weekend. Who knows? We'll have to keep an eye on that. And we're another week closer to the NFL draft, which we'll finally see what teams do. Teams that need quarterbacks, we'll see what they end up doing. Because, again, there's been a lot of shifting. Drake May his stock going down. J.J. McCarthy, his stock going up. Now Michael Penix could be a top 10 pick, at least with some people's mock drafts. At least some people see the Giants maybe taking him. So, yeah, it's and you know, receivers, teams need receivers. It's a lot, but that's like I said, that's coming up. So, like I said, we will cover it, and looking forward to that. But we'll see. Maybe another trade happens. So yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again on Monday, and until then, well, at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and have a good weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.